Let's kickstart this discussion in this segment, the new craze for electric vehicles. And joining us now is Anupam Gupta, investment research consultant, and somebody who's a keen interest in the automotive space. Well, doesn't everybody? Let me put it that way, Anupam. Thanks so much for joining in. We're kickstarting Insight, and it's special to do this discussion. So I think the obvious question is, how is it that people in India can play this whole influx of the electric vehicle idea?
Two ways. So first is the OEMs, okay, because these are the guys who will actually be making the cars out there. I think Tata Motors has just got an order for 10,000 vehicles from the government, and I think Mahindra has already been there for quite some time with Reva. So these guys are actually going to be making the electric vehicles, whether it's a four-wheeler, whether it's a two-wheeler. On the two-wheeler side, I think that Hero Moto has some plans. That's already quite big for them. But the more interesting piece of the pie is really the auto ancillary industry, right? Because if what the government is saying, which is that by 2030 there won't be any petrol or any diesel car on the roads, this is a sector that really stands to be shaken a lot. Yeah. And this sector has got a very long history in India. I mean, they started off with the with the OEMs back in the 90s. So if you look at how these clusters have developed, there is Delhi where you've got Maruti, sure, and Hero Honda, and all the ancillaries are out there. In that period of time, only a few have become really big. If you look at the market cap right now for all these players, you've got Bosch, you've got Motherson Sumi, you've got the battery makers, Excite, Amara, right, and then you've got everybody else.
So let's try and break up this discussion into four parts. Okay. Let's start off with part one, which is, and we're talking about the auto component industry. So viewers, for the benefit of all of you who are tuning into this discussion on Insight, the insight that we are trying to get to you today is that if electric vehicles are going to become big, does the auto component industry get impacted? And how does it get impacted? So part one of this discussion is that this industry is broken into various fragments. There are some auto component companies which are very large. There are some auto component companies which are not so large.
Yes, that's right.
Now tell us your insight into how each of these, or how these clusters would get impacted.
So you take the guys at the top, right? You've got Bosch, you've got Motherson Sumi. Now Motherson Sumi started off by making wiring harnesses for Maruti, and look where it's come now. In about 30 years, it's among the largest auto component stocks in India. It's got a wide range of products right now. It is still very good in wiring harnesses, but it's added rear view mirrors also. And then you've got Bosch. Now, Bosch is a multinational. It's a global giant, and it's got enough technologies across the board to ensure that it stays in the game when EVs come in. And the same thing with Motherson Sumi also. Same thing for batteries also, because you've got Excite and you've got Amara. Amara makes lead acid batteries for three-wheelers. So they might not be making lithium-ion batteries right now, but they will be well prepared for as and when the transition happens. The rest of the bunch, however, you really have to go component to component, client to client, and then see whether what they're making is going to be relevant to an OEM at all in the future. You know, so you would have a small company like a Graphite, which I believe has been going up a lot in the markets. You've got a Himadri Chemicals also, which has also been doing well. Here, you don't really have a clear idea. These are small companies, you know. So you'll have to figure it out as to whether they have the capabilities to really have products which will fit in well with the EV ecosystem as and when it comes in. We are all trying to take a bet that this is it, you know, that after 2030, EVs will be the big thing. I'm not sure it's going to be that easy. Even China didn't have such. China, which is the largest EV market in the world, supported it with huge subsidies. Nothing of that sort in India. Where we are right now, I think electric vehicles and the entire story is still some time away. If you have to play that, I would say go with companies that have established competitive advantages. Think of a Bosch, think of a Motherson Sumi. This is how I would play it.
Well, to support the whole idea of having electric vehicles, which the government is aiming, so to say, by 2030, and we really hope that comes about because of the environment. But what about the charging stations? Now, they are required to support the electric vehicle space. Is there any stock or any company or player that you think will benefit out of it? Because I don't think we have much of charging stations right now.
No, I just saw one put up at Phoenix Mills just nearby. So I think that story is still playing out. Bangalore has much more charging stations than Bombay, but my guess is an NTPC or a Tata Power would be much better placed to benefit from this boom as and when it happens.
Okay, but you know, when you talk about ancillaries, does it really require, very different set of capabilities in terms of technology, in terms of know-how, or you just need to, make some changes in design and maybe even in your plant?
Right.
But then you can easily adapt to it. So how big
that's
the
a
risk
very
is?
good question, right? So the thing is that in an EV, the number of moving parts are much less. So there are a lot of components which won't be required at all. You don't need a fuel tank. You don't need a radiator. You don't need a lot of other products. So those literally will not be required.
So what companies lose out as a result of that?
My guess is that anybody who's making radiators, cylinders, oil filters, you can talk about it like a UCAL fuel, someone like that, fuel injectors. Now see, again, Bosch has a lot of these products, but it's also well present in what an EV requires, like a charging station, right? So the bigger you are, the more global you are, you're more equipped to tackle the EV threat as and when it comes. But if you're someone who's in one of these belts, whether it's Delhi, whether it's Maharashtra, whether it's Chennai, and who's servicing only one client with one product, it's going to be tough. One fine day, these products might not even be required. So those players, and there are many of them, a lot of companies are out there.
So is it possible to list out or mention certain names? I mean, those in the lowest cluster is probably you are talking about.
I am talking about. So I mentioned UCAL Fuel as one. There are a lot of other companies also. It's, the list is really long. If you look at the auto component players who are less than $500 million of market cap, it's a huge list, and it's still not sure, how these companies will be impacted. They can easily go out and acquire the technology for an EV ancillary tomorrow and still be well equipped, and given that this is going to play out in the next 20 years, I think it's a bit early right now to go into whether these companies will shut down or how they will be impacted for now.
Has the work started, since you're tracking this space pretty closely? If there are companies who have to upgrade their plants
Right.
or get some sort of technological advancement, has the
now,
work
no.
started? Not
right,
at all.
Right now, no.
So-
If you just look at, the most important part in an EV is a battery. And the
Alright.
lithium-ion battery is still being imported into India. So if we are still at that level,
Is there any company which is attempting to make that battery in India?
I think Exide has some plans. Exide,
Okay.
I think in one of the quarterly calls, they had mentioned that they are looking at it. So that's how I would play that space.
So, when Tata Motors moved to Sanand, I was tracking that story very closely, and there were a number of ancillaries that moved along. And
Yes.
that was a big story locally in that area, so many new players coming in.
Right.
Are you actually telling us that going forward,
Right.
maybe a big auto company
Right.
won't require a support from such a large number of companies, the number of vendors will come down substantially?
It's half and half, right? So one fact is that whenever an OEM starts a factory anywhere, and that's how India's auto sector has also developed, it needs to make an ecosystem of ancillary players all around near the factory, which is how you've got Delhi has a lot of auto ancillary players, Chennai and Maharashtra. All of them have a very dense network of auto ancillary players. It's very likely that the OEM might talk to these ancillary players, right, and ask them that, can you upgrade your facilities? Can you start making new products for us? So I think once the OE and the ancillary go hand in hand and see if there is a future for them together, I think that should work out well. I mean, I've really not seen any ancillary player right now today, who is completely and totally equipped to make the smaller parts of an EV. You've got batteries figured out, you've got wiring harnesses figured out, all of that is fine. But once you come lower down the scale, I don't think our industry is that well prepared right now. Look at it this way. The largest electric auto product being sold right now is a two-wheeler and a three-wheeler, unorganized. And then you've got Mahindra & Mahindra's E2O, and all of those ancillaries are already being made by the ancillary providers to M&M. So I think you will have to see it component player to component player and what their ties are with the OEM.
Yeah. So here's the drill. Viewers, I think the one small conclusion that we're drawing out here is, one, it's probably too early to try and write obituaries about auto component players as well, which may not be supplying to EVs, because that might be still some time away, and we'll get to that point as well. Okay. But I think your research, Anupam, shows you that larger companies, the 5 large companies in India which cater to OEMs, so yes. Bosch, Motherson Sumi, battery makers, and maybe to an extent companies like Wapco,
that's right.
These are well protected.
These are reasonably well
Even
protected.
if EVs completely replace the combustion engine, these the fortunes of these companies will not be impacted.
Not in a major way. Not
in a major way.
Bosch will be, because it's also making fuel injectors, but
Yeah,
not
but
the entire top line will not generally vanish
But Bosch,
at
I
one
think,
time.
recently made an announcement that they are preponing their
Yes.
technological advancement.
Yes.
In September, they mentioned this announcement.
That's right.
And I think in Germany, Bosch has tied up with an electric scooter manufacturer
Yes.
to supply scooters as well.
Yeah. So see, that's where size and technology matters, right?
Right.
You wouldn't expect $100 million revenues, small ancillary guys to be as well protected as Bosch. So for Bosch, if 2 or 3 products shut down, another new area opens up. Same for Motherson Sumi. It's got entrenched strengths in electricals. It makes wiring harnesses after all. So they will be more well protected as compared to the smaller players.
Okay, so we've gotten a list, guys. I don't know if you have any questions. My final thought out here was that we have a list of sorts from Anupam about companies which will probably get impacted, companies which won't. So large ones may not get impacted. Yeah. Maybe some smaller companies which are into radiators, cylinders, oil filters, and fuel injectors. That's the part 4 of our discussion. These are the companies which might get impacted in a big way. But Anupam, I would presume too early to call.
Too early to call. Long term. If you look at India's growth right now in the OE space is still going really well. Whether it's car sales, passenger car sales, truck sales, two-wheelers, they're all still doing pretty well right now. And I think that until and unless a battery equation does not get resolved, you're not going to find such an easy switch from what's called ICE to EV happening really soon.
Do you want to take a guess if we're actually going to achieve government's target by 2030?
I would say we are 60% yes and 40% no. I think we're in 2017. We've got 13 years to go. Look at the way the auto industry has developed. We went from BS3, BS2 to BS. So all these transitions have been difficult. Look at CNG. You know, it's taken a lot of time. The operating costs are still very compelling as compared to a petrol or a diesel thing, but it's still not had wide popularity. I would still say 60%, 60-40 with that.
I must say the NBCC has signed a JV with a Finnish company to set up charging stations in India. So that's things are moving at a rapid pace.
I'm seriously worried. How long do I need to be parked at the charging station to have my car fully charged?
Full night.
No, I think
so. You go park it there, come back, and then.
No, I think that will improve. But if Tesla's experience is anything to go by, and I know you're not comparing Tesla with what will happen in India.
They like to give great expectations, but they have been missing their numbers really badly.
No, which I agree. But the charging time at Tesla-owned charging stations has come off quite rapidly from what I read.
It has, because they are at the top edge of technology. We are still nowhere on that.
That's true. Anyways, Anupam, great having you, on this inaugural show of insight, so to say.
Okay.
And good to have your insights. Look forward to have you more often.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Thank you.